For the past several years, the moon hasn't been operating normally. Not emotionally, not astrologically, not energetically. And most people don't realize that the chaos they felt wasn't personal, it was structural. In this video, I'm going to explain why 2026 is the first year in nearly a decade where the moon actually stabilizes, what disrupted it for so long, and why manifestation, emotional processing, and timing finally start making sense again. Because if you've been doing the work and still feeling like your emotions loop instead of resolve, if you've been trying to manifest and noticing things start, break, restart, break again, this isn't because you're doing it wrong. It's because the system you were trying to regulate yourself inside of was unstable. And if the last few years felt exhausting, no matter how much work you did on yourself, this video will explain why. The moon governs rhythm. It governs regulation, emotional processing, responsiveness. It is not a manifestation shortcut. It's a feedback system. The moon is what tells you whether something belongs in your life before your logic can fully explain it. It's the part of you that knows when something is safe, when something is real, and when something is off. When the moon functions well, emotions move. Cycles complete. Rest restores energy. You feel something. You process it. You integrate it. And then you're free again. But when the moon is disrupted, nothing fully integrates. Feelings repeat, patterns loop, and closure never lands. And that is exactly what the last several years have felt like for most people. Not just emotionally, in relationships, in money, in identity, in the body, in the nervous system, in the sense of what's stable, what's dependable, and what's real. Here's the key concept. In astrology, there is a term called exaltation. Exaltation is where a planet performs best. It's like the planet's favorite environment. It can express its gifts cleanly there. The moon is exalted in Taurus, which means Taurus is supposed to be where the moon becomes stable, grounded, resourced, regulated, and safe. Taurus is the sign of the body, the senses, the nervous system, attachment, material reality, what you can touch, and what you can count on. So, if the moon is meant to feel strongest there, imagine what happens when you put Uranus in that same space. For nearly 8 years, Uranus moved through Taurus, the sign of the moon's exaltation. And Uranus is not a calm planet. Uranus is vitality. Uranus is disruption. Uranus is the lightning strike that breaks the old pattern so something new can emerge. So, imagine putting electrical instability into the very place the moon relies on for stability. That's what happened. And if you want the exact timeline, this matters because it explains why the last few years have felt like multiple chapters of chaos, not just one continuous wave. Uranus first entered Taurus on May 15, 2018, and stayed there until November 6, 2018. Then it retrograded back into Aries from November 6, 2018 until March 6, 2019. And that retrograde matters because it felt like an emotional whiplash. Like instability, then a false sense of restarting, then instability again. Then Uranus moved forward in Taurus again from March 6, 2019 until July 7, 2025. That's the long stretch. That's the era where most people remember the years where stability didn't feel stable anymore. Then Uranus retrograded into Gemini from July 7, 2025 until November 7, 2025. A brief mental and informational destabilization on top of everything else. Then Uranus returned to Taurus one final time from November 7, 2025 until November 25, 2026. And on November 25, 2026, Uranus enters Gemini, ending that entire Taurus transit. That's the exit point. That is the moment the moon finally stops being forced to regulate itself inside an unstable environment. Now, let's be clear about what this disruption actually looked like in real life. Uranus and Taurus didn't just make people change their minds. It disrupted emotional safety. It disrupted bodily regulation. It disrupted material security. It disrupted attachment patterns. It made the nervous system hypersensitive. It made stability feel like something you couldn't fully trust because it could change without warning. This is why people felt like they were constantly recalibrating but never settling. And that's not weakness, and that's not failure. That's what happens when the ground keeps moving. Even if you're strong, even if you're disciplined, even if you're spiritually aware, you can't relax on a floor that keeps shifting. This wasn't personal failure, it was a disrupted system. And now, here's where the shift happens. In 2026, Uranus no longer occupies Taurus. That alone changes everything. But here's the part people miss. When the moon returns to stability, it doesn't become louder, it becomes clearer. A lot of people expect stability to feel like fireworks. But stability isn't fireworks. Stability is quiet. Stability is when your nervous system stops bracing for impact. 2026 is the first year in nearly a decade where emotional cycles are allowed to complete without constantly being interrupted by external volatility. This is why 2026 will feel less dramatic in the collective, but more consequential for individuals. And I want to add something important here, because it's part of what makes this year so unique. A lot of the fixed stars aligning with the new moons and the full moons of 2026 are subtle, quiet, and stabilizing. And that's not a bad thing. In recent years, there were more loud alignments, stars and signatures that felt extreme, mythic, dramatic, almost like cosmic headlines. In 2026, the sky is not performing, it's integrating. No extreme mythic pressure, no constant shock. That means emotional events finally resolve instead of echo. Let me say that again, because this is the core point of this entire video. In 2026, emotional events resolve instead of echo. Now, does stable mean boring? No. Stable means completed. Stable means you feel something, you process it, and it doesn't haunt you for the next 6 months. Stable means decisions stick. Stable means manifestations hold. And that's why 2026 doesn't feel explosive. It feels consequential. Because this is the kind of year where what you choose lasts. Here's what that means in practice. If you enter a relationship in 2026, it's not just a vibe, it becomes a direction. If you start building something in 2026, it's not just an idea, it becomes a structure. If you commit to a new identity in 2026, it's not just a rebrand, it becomes embodied. This is the year where trying becomes becoming. If you've been waiting for things to finally land, this is that year. And now we have to talk about eclipses, because eclipses are still intense. But the eclipses of 2026 aren't loud, they're corrective. Eclipses are edits. They remove what's outdated, distortive, or misaligned. And they don't always feel gentle, but they are precise. And in 2026, the eclipse signature isn't burn it all down, it's recalibrate the signal. Identity, belonging, and emotional sovereignty are edited rather than destroyed. This is not a year of reinvention. It is a year of alignment. Now, let's take the last piece. How to actually work with 2026 in a way that gives you the advantage. because this is the year where timing becomes specific again. You don't force manifestation in 2026. You respond accurately. That's why people who understand lunar timing are going to feel like they're moving faster than everyone else. Not because they're rushing, but because they're aligned. Degrees matter again. Moon phases matter again. Your personal chart matters again. And this is exactly why tools like a solar map matter. Because when things are unstable, people lean on generalized content, sun sign horoscopes, random predictions, viral posts that make astrology feel like a meme. But when timing becomes precise again, you need precision. You need to know where the lunation hits your chart, which house it activates, which degrees it triggers, what it's actually asking for in your personal system. This is where a solar map becomes a timing tool, not just an astrology app. It helps you stop guessing and start tracking what's real. And I'll close with this. The moon isn't dramatic in 2026. It's honest. And honesty is what finally allows things to settle. If the last decade felt unstable, this is where the ground returns. Not with fireworks, with clarity, with consequence, with completion. And when cycles finally complete, you finally get your energy back.